we're in Manchester today as we take the Future Marketing series on tour. And today we're joined by Nick Entwistle, who is founder of the Bank of Creativity and 1 Minute Briefs, for anybody who's familiar with that on Twitter. So we're going to have a bit of a conversation just about Nick's background and experience. So thanks very much for joining us today, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hopefully we can get something interesting for the people who are watching today. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your job is, and the work you're doing with Bank of Creativity and 1 Minute Briefs?
Yeah, sure. Well, do all sorts really, get involved in all sorts of creative stuff. So over the last 3 years, my own background has been as a creative, progressing to being a creative director within agencies. Um, at the same time I was doing that, I started 1 Minute Briefs. I actually started that in university as a little side project, and the idea of it is very much you've got 1 minute to come up with an idea. Uh, we did it as a bit of fun. People wanted to get involved in it. People were looking over our shoulders, having a laugh at doing these things, and then they got involved, and then I took it to Twitter a few years later. So yeah, so alongside my sort of day job, I was running this feed that just grew and grew at a huge rate very early on. Ended up doing talks and being invited to
Yeah,
be able to do things like this. So yeah, there's so much to it. My own background is writing scripts, films, and directing TV adverts and social
okay.
media films and things. So uh, it's quite nice at the moment because I've got running 1 minute briefs, but also I've got a bit of flexibility to get involved in doing some film direction, and it's a bit of a luxury to be able to choose a couple of things to. Um, Obviously, Bank of Creativity is more of a it's not an agency as such, but I work with a lot of different production partners and film crews and things like that. To sometimes we do billboards, sometimes we do film, social stuff.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I want to come on to that actually a little bit later because I think it's a really interesting. It's a thread. That community thing seems to be a thread that's run through the
yeah,
stuff that you've done. But if we going back to the start, so you studied graphic design and advertising.
yeah.
When did you realize that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, actually, going back to when I was at school, I was good academically,
Yeah,
so English, history, that type of thing, and I was okay at graphic design. But that was my passion really. I wasn't naturally as gifted as I was in other areas, writing and
right.
things. And when I said I was going to do graphic design at college,
Yeah.
at Stockport College as well, which is not known for being that great, really. Uh, my teachers were like, "No, you're not going
And
doing that."
see this is the interesting part of this movie because this is because you were a relatively high achiever at school.
Yeah,
There was a feeling that you couldn't lower yourself to go and do a graphic design thing.
yeah.
Like why do you think that was?
I don't know. I think it's the sort of connotation of. I mean, one thing is probably that they thought you're going to be a graphic designer, and it's not necessarily the way. And I think that's an interesting thing to be able to tell younger people as they go into the industry. There isn't a course specifically for every single thing in the creative industry. So if you take something like that, you can then sort of forge your own path. Obviously, I do films now, and I actually do a lot of writing now, which comes from being able to write in school. So I've not got any qualifications in English or anything, but I can still apply that to, and I can also see what things look like, and if I need to design stuff, I've
Yeah,
got the I've got the sort of art direction capability to do that. Um, but I think it's just the sort of there's a negative connotation with being a graphic designer,
yeah,
potentially earning lower than something like they were trying to push me to be a lawyer or something like that. Now, probably could apply myself to do that type of thing, but I just I wouldn't enjoy
I
it,
wouldn't enjoy it.
you know.
Yeah,
So and another thing, they also tried to push me in the way of architecture,
right.
and my work placement at school was in an architect's office, and it was all right. I got involved in a few things, but very mathematical and all the materials and stuff. It wasn't really exciting for me. But we went on a site visit to look at sort of structure of one of the buildings that they'd done. They had to survey it every year or something like that. And the building was actually McCann Manchester. And I just wasn't interested in what was the joins of the windows and things like that. It was very much what was going on inside.
Inside.
And I was looking at the adverts on the wall. Thought, oh, I'd love to do that.
Okay.
All the headlines and things that they were scribbling down, and that actually probably swayed me at a time. I want to go into that direction. And to be honest, the advertising course itself at Stockport was cancelled that year. I don't know why, funding or something, and they merged it into graphic design. They said you can still do it, do the advertising modules of graphic design.
Mm.
So that's why I sort of went in that direction. Yeah, and hopefully, prove the teachers wrong that you can achieve things and use your skills in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into a conversation about the merits of the education system, but
Yeah,
but um, you hear creative people all the time, and we struggle with it as well. In the video business, there is a sort of snobbery about different routes, different career routes, and what are more credible than others. And it just strikes me that that starts in school. When teachers are saying to people who have an enthusiasm for a creative thing, oh, don't do that, go be a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor. It's like, really?
yeah,
Are we still doing this?
yeah.
Like, we're still telling school kids that those three professional careers are the only careers of any value, and anybody doing anything creative is destined for a life of poverty.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, it's also the support behind. My mum supported me in that as well. Whereas perhaps some families might push you in that direction as well. Uh, I used to I used to draw packets. I used to draw random cards and packets of cereal and random
Yeah.
things at home and stuff. I was never any good. I'm still rubbish at drawing and stuff like that now. But yeah, I'm still sort of I still do that now to this day. I've got a book that I just take around with me and do these sketches. So I just like to try and stay as creative and free thinking as I can, rather than feeling a bit trapped in an accountancy job or something like
Yeah.
that. There are people that are great at that and love it, but it's just not for me.
Okay, so go on and tell us a little bit more. Then you touched on it earlier about this, the idea behind the sort of bank of creativity. Um, what do you do? Who you do it for? And why do you think it works?
Well, the actual name of the Bank of Creativity came from one of our 1 minute briefs. Me and my creative partner at the time were working in an agency and we wanted a brand for ourselves. Uh, so we both said, right, we've got 1 minute to come up with a business card. And one of the ideas we wrote was Bank of Creativity with a long phone number across the front, like a credit card. And from there, we looked at the domain, and the domain was available. I thought it's a really good, quite good name, this.
It is.
So it was just, it's not necessarily by chance, but it all just came from a 1 minute idea. And then it's sort of progressed as being a creative team brand. My creative partner, when we were at McCann, he went travelling for a bit, then came back and worked with me in a different agency, and now directs films at another agency as well. So I'm still chat a lot, but he went and did his own thing, and then I sort of carried on Bank of Creativity and 1 minute briefs. But yeah, it just came from there, and we played on the theme of it. We sort of had it as an actual bank, so we did
Yeah.
pictures of us in banking suits and
I
going
noticed
back to
even
the
the
accounting
language
thing.
that you used, even because you have things like, with really high interest rates,
Yeah,
and open your account
yeah,
is the call to action on the,
yeah,
it's all very deliberate.
yeah,
So what's
definitely.
what's behind? I mean, what's behind that sort of language? What?
I suppose it's just having a brand and just learning. I'm always learning from different people, like creative directors in my agencies and stuff. And one of them, called Chris Beckles, he said to he said, you know, be a brand, you know, to differentiate yourself in the industry. And so, in fact, James sent me our first cover letter thing. It was a little bit cringy that we're sending out, but we sent it as a bank statement
Right.
to agencies,
Okay.
and said, this is our statement, and we'll do in the very first week, we'll do this, 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 and this. Imagine what we can do in a year, that sort of thing. So we're always trying to sort of push boundaries of, we didn't expect, and this comes from our course actually, it was a very good course. They pushed us to go out and visit agencies. And, you know, I think a lot of people, particularly these days, they get to the end of a 3-year course and think they're going to get a job, and it just isn't the case. There are so many people at every university and older people going for those jobs. So it was just about being different, being a brand. And when we put ourselves out as the Bank of Creativity rather than Nick and James, people took notice. And sometimes people just thought we were an agency already, and people were asking us for placements and things, and we were like, no, we're at that stage.
Yeah.
But it gave us a people started following us because we're the Bank of Creativity,
Yes.
and it was something that became bigger. But yeah, so we played on the theme. We had a bit just about also having a bit of fun and with it. So I still do that. I'd love to push it even more, really. In fact, I've got a design for the credit card that I always did. I've just never ever done it in
Right.
about 10 years.
Yeah.
Because not many people
Well,
use
you've told
business
people
cards.
about it now, so maybe it has
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, when when I left my last role within an agency, I sort of progressed the Bank of Creativity into going from a creative team, sort of reinvented it a bit into more of an agency.
Yeah.
So I was able to put some of the work that I'd done on there, and like say, generating high interest rates for brands and stuff. We can use that language a little bit, but also the way I see the Bank of Creativity is not a typical agency. I would love to have I've always wanted to have an old bank in Manchester, on a corner of Manchester, and fill it with people. And I'd love to have like the old pens that with the beaded things that you see in
Oh
banks
yeah,
with
yeah, oh
sharpies
yeah,
on the end and
yeah.
all that type of
Will you
thing.
fill in your deposit notes and stuff?
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So and everything would be themed like that. I'd love to do it, but I've not necessarily got the motivation to fill a place with staff and go
Okay.
under that sort of stress. So the way I see it is actually a bank of creativity. So I've been able to connect with lots of people over the years. So film producers, editors, animators. And I've got almost like a bank of those people that I go to every time I need to do something.
Yeah.
So we still work as an agency, but don't have those big overheads and the stress of getting
Yeah.
people in, and I can sort of pick and choose.
And I mean, I assume you see that model more
Yeah,
often now, and it's I assume the benefit of that is you're able to go out and find the right team for the project that you're working on, rather than being
yeah,
restricted to the bodies that you have in the room at that period of time. You know, that overhead that you have, and you just got to make it work. Whereas if
that's
you
a good
have the
point.
flexibility to go out and say, no, let's find the best people to work on the
Definitely, yeah. Or
individual.
sometimes, even budgets as well. So sometimes you might know someone that's a little bit cheaper, but can do a great job. Or another one might be an agency that you work with, and obviously agencies come with higher fees, but you're getting if it's a TV advert or something, and you need someone really strong on it, or to a point where it's someone that's quite junior in the industry, and you can pass work to them and say, look, there's not much budget in this, but this could be something great. I can give you this amount for it. Um, so it's just having that sort of hierarchy of people at the same time as being flexible to do the best job.
I mean that community element obviously runs through with the Bank of Creativity, also the work that you're doing with
Yeah,
Women of Briefs. Is that a conscious decision, or is that just something that you think is the best approach to getting the best results?
I think it's just come from learning and seeing how it works over. Because 1 Minute Briefs was never intended to be this huge community that it became. It was just having a laugh,
Yeah.
particularly for the first few years, and and also allowing a bit of creative freedom for ourselves initially, and then when we opened it up to a 1 minute brief of the day. Obviously, when you first do it on Twitter, you've got no followers, no one does it. Uh, but then, you know, someone enters in the week and you think, oh, it's good. But because what they were doing was they were entering in response to us, but they're tweeting to their own following. So
It's the multiplier sort of
it
effect.
multiply. We never knew that. We didn't even know what Twitter was about. We were just sort of testing it out and putting our own silly ideas on. And it's just been a constant. It's the same. We do a different brief every single day. It's never changed from that. But it's just learning that the community have an outlet as well for mental health, and friendships happen from it,
Yeah.
events that we do.
I'm sure there's all sorts of collaborations have probably started as
Yeah,
well from people meeting each other on Twitter and
yeah. Or there's there's big campaigns that come out of it. I mean, that was one of the biggest ones that we did was the NHS one in 2015, and
is this the one? This isn't. Not many people have anything on their CV that say they can say they stopped Justin Bieber getting to Christmas #1. I mean, that's not bad. Can you just
yeah.
tell
Well,
us a little bit about that
I
one,
did.
just to tell us?
Well, I mean, I remember telling my friends at the time, I'm going to get the NHS to Christmas #1, and they just thought I was mad. Uh, and working with this with the Gate Films, and there was an outside chance of the NHS during some cuts within our government, and it was a time of a bit of low morale within the NHS and stuff. So we said we'll do a little film. But I said at the time, actually, in fact, I'd just recovered um, from I'd had a heart attack that year, so I was particularly keen to help the NHS. And
Yeah.
obviously, I'm young, and they essentially saved my life with that situation. And so I wanted to give something back at that point. So I said, well, so this is this first company that said, can you come and work for us after? And I was a bit timid and after what had happened to me. And I said, well, why don't we get the 1 Minute Briefs community involved and see, and we'll say, we'll make a film with one of these ideas and stuff. So that happened. And then we did this, and a lot of the things do escalate through the community. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen with it. So we said, right, we'll make this film. And then the NHS choir got in touch with us and said, could that film be our music video? So of course we said, let's make it happen. So we worked with film directors in London, went down and shot in London in a London hospital. Worked with Sai, my boss's mum at the time, who I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a show called Seven Up where they film families over
Oh yes, I have seen that.
seven
They follow them every
every
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and she was the producer, is the producer on that.
Okay.
Uh, and it was amazing to work with her. And but yeah, this sort of the things just escalated, and then so we made this film, started posting it out there. Then I asked, it was based on wedding vows. So, do you love your NHS? So we created Love Your NHS as a brand. Again, I didn't really know what I was necessarily doing, and there was no plan. But it was just from learning on what what can generate some interest and things like that. So we did that, and then I thought, what about do you love your NHS? Say I do, and get people holding up I do. Then I asked some people, can we tag celebrities into this? One celebrity does it, then other celebrities want to do it. Then it's on This Morning with Holly and Phil, and um, all sorts of people start doing this. Piers Morgan did it. So suddenly we're being talked about, and then we're going up the live charts. And then on on a certain day, we went ahead of Justin Bieber into #1 spot in the live chart over the week, because you can sort of monitor it. And that evening, I remember I was getting into bed, and the whole time I was looking at my phone during that time. Um, and he himself tweeted, "Let's hope the NHS do it." I was
Right.
like, "Oh my god!" At first, it was weird. I had a bit of an annoyed feeling at first, because I thought we're already in #1 spot. But then we were talking, and spoke to the NHS comms director shortly after, and said, the most famous man in the world at this point
I
has
think he had the
tweeted.
most Twitter followers or something, didn't
Probably,
he?
yeah,
Yeah.
and especially at that time, it was all about him. I think he had 3 tracks in the top 5, so he was dominating the charts as well at the time. So it was like, yes, we've got the most famous man in the world tweeting about our campaign that started as a 1 minute little silly idea. So yeah, and then on Christmas Day, I'm sat with my mum watching the music video. I think it's before or after the Queen's speech, and um, yeah, it was, obviously amazing. People ringing up, crying, and all that. But I think it was at that point you realise this community is really special. They helped me through a very difficult time in my life because the health, but then helped the NHS achieve the sort of unachievable, really, somehow. By, and the team all around it were amazing.
And I'm sure for the people who, working in the NHS, I mean, it's more relevant than ever, I suppose, after the 2 years we've just been through with COVID as well. You know, um, it must have been pretty reaffirming for the job that they're doing day and daily to see the affection and the standing with which people genuinely hold that institution and everybody that works in it.
Definitely, and personally, I wanted to give something back, not just from that moment, but for everything that they do for people. And sometimes I know, I mean, I've seen it because when we went and filmed it, it was very much filming real stuff happening. There was
Yeah,
nothing pretend, and I think that came out in the filming because if we'd sort of staged certain things, you could tell,
yeah,
but because it felt so real, that's where the emotion comes out of the film, and that's why people really took to it. So yeah, reaffirming to know that the public was supporting them. We raised a lot of money for charities as well, mental health charities and Carers UK as well. But yeah, it was nice to be able to give something back at that point.
yeah,
And I think also everyone could relate to all of the different film. It was for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. The NHS is there, and the concept really worked. Whenever
yeah,
you need it, it's there.
yeah,
That type of thing.
yeah. I mean, going back to the 1 minute briefs idea, it sounds a bit crass to talk about commercial stuff after the NHS thing, but you said the idea came from just having a laugh and there was no plan, and this just started. How does that work commercially now? I mean, how does it justify itself? How does it pay for itself?
Yeah. Well, we first started doing it, we did a couple of briefs with brands. I think it might have been Lucasade or even a smaller brand when we first did it, probably just before the NHS stuff. So 2014 maybe the first one, and it was obviously I was running it alongside my job, so it was just a little bit of extra money um, to run it. Obviously, I've run it for years, so it's taken up a lot of my time. It's become a lifestyle for me, and it was almost it became a full-time job alongside a full-time job. So I needed to try and justify it, especially when I left the industry as it was, and I was in a well-paid job at the time, and I had to sort of decide: do I go? Do I sort of take a step back in terms of wage and stuff because I wasn't able to charge loads of money for these things,
Yeah,
and some of that is because people didn't really know what a 1 minute brief was. They're all used to traditional agencies and whatever. And over time, we've been able to sort of do almost like a sponsored brief. So a brand will sponsor the day's brief,
right.
and then it's about them, and then they'll offer quite good prizes. So we've done, we're doing a Movember one today, and we've done also Gymshark, uh, Adobe, Coca Cola. Coca Cola rang me up from Atlanta, said we want to do the biggest one ever. and I couldn't believe it really. I just thought this little 1 minute idea is now being spoken about by big brands across the world. So yeah, it's just sort of growing in that way, and then sometimes out of these 1 minute ideas, other like we did some stuff with WWF and
That's the world without nature one,
the
was
World Without
it?
Nature
Yeah,
campaign.
yeah.
So Zahid Anwar did an idea one day as a result of one of our briefs, which was, I think it was World Wildlife Day, and he did this. It was really, really simple. He took the nature out of brand logos or football team logos and stuff. And as soon as I saw it, I thought that could be the biggest campaign that anyone's ever seen
Yeah,
for WWF. So I got in touch with them and said, "Can you, like, this is a nice idea in itself, this little thing, but what if we could get Twitter to take their bird off their logo for the day and
yeah.
get it talked about?" That was how high I thought that idea could go.
Okay. You'd be asking Elon Musk, of course, to do that now.
Well,
So
he might do it, yeah, and potentially if they want to do it next year again,
yeah,
was it? Yeah, next year in March, if they want to do it again, because we did do it for a second year and it went even bigger, and it had the reach in terms of impressions were like 500 million or something ridiculous. But what we were doing was all we were doing is asking a question to a brand: "Will you do this on a day?" And then they become the influencer to what's going on, and then people say, "Why is your logo changed?" And then Greta
starts the
Thunberg,
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, she tweeted about it, and then again it's this escalation. You don't know, it's just asking, and then when one football team says yeah, you can tell all the others they're doing it.
Yeah,
So will you
yeah,
do it? It's
yeah,
just like this the NHS celebrity thing
yeah.
that people want to be seen to get involved. People are hesitant at first to be the first one, but
So the start of so it sounds to me then so the start of any great sort of campaign that accelerates like that is one you know, people think how would you ever go about getting all these brands involved, and the thing is, so you what it sounds to me from what you're saying is you just need one,
yeah,
just get one and you're started, and then somebody else will want to do it because that one did it, and
sort
then
of,
it
yeah. And I
just goes.
think that the way I think about it is, I can't remember if this is how I think about it or someone told me once, but it was like little fires
Yes,
that get started and stuff, and then suddenly it's like, so it has to start with a one little spark somewhere, and then yeah, it just sort of
exactly.
escalates, and yeah, so that campaign had ridiculous reach, but again came from something so simple as doing that. So I think it's the simplicity of thinking as well, which is where 1 minute brief comes in, because it takes away all the rubbish that you get asked to put on adverts, and can we make the logo bigger? Can we do this
Can
headline?
we make the logo
Can we?
bigger? Must be the biggest request. Must be the
Yeah, it's
most
just
common request
yeah,
you get.
and if your advert is good enough, they will look at the logo and they will remember it. So it's but if you whack the logo big and then put discounts and a bullet point list of your benefits and things like that, no one's going to look at your advert. They don't care.
Yeah,
So get people's attention through emotion,
yeah.
whether it makes them laugh or that they're like, "Oh, that's clever. They've taken the animal off there," um, or the NHS was very in parts happy and in parts sad, and everyone related to one little different thing in that. So I think that's very much where that little simple thinking, if you can put it on a billboard and it works, you can then take that idea into all sorts of different areas. And it just needs to start with one little idea, and then that's why 1 minute briefs works really well. And I actually use that in my day to day life as a way of coming
Sort
up
of
with ideas.
restrict the amount of time you give yourself to come up with something.
Just be instinctive, and more often than
Mm.
not, like you might think of us. I've always thought of silly, ridiculous ideas, but one of my one of my favourite adverts. It was only I did an advert for Vauxhall, a billboard for the Vauxhall Adam, and the ad I wrote all these things about the benefits of this car. I think it's free insurance. That's what. And and then I just made myself laugh a little bit, and because it's called the Adam, and it's like a. So I put uh, Mr. Boombastic insurance, fantastic, right? And I know it's a bit of a silly one, but it sticks in my mind because, and the client said, "I love that."
Yeah.
I threw it in as a separate thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it ends up on a bill. It's silly, but also if you find it funny, the members of the public are as well.
Yeah. It's always the worry, though, isn't it? You know, when you think, am I the only person that
Yeah,
laughs at this?
exactly. Yeah, but even I've done different things. I wrote a children's book uh, a few years ago for about the New Forest, and I wrote it to make me laugh as a poem about these animals and stuff in the
Okay.
forest and things. And I thought adults will want to hopefully read this because it's making me laugh. I'm not trying to write it to, but obviously I know that hopefully kids would like it, and yeah, that went really well as well. And got into schools and stuff. So sometimes you've just got to come back to a very simple, effective idea. Sometimes it's a pun. Sometimes it's just something that makes you laugh about.
Yeah.
And then if it relates to you, more than likely will relate to other people. Don't try and fit something to sell a product. Try and do it to get people to look at that product, and then that will hopefully sell itself. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on then to another campaign. I mean, I saw you. First met you whenever you came over to speak at Social Media Savvy in Belfast. And I mean, I can honestly say I've been to a lot of events. I mean, anybody that knows me will tell you I go to the opening of an envelope. Um, so uh, I've never seen a crowd at an event. I've never heard silence
Mm,
like a crowd at an event when you played the C word video.
yeah,
Was that another Woman of Brief's idea originally, or where did that one come from?
yeah. It was actually. It was by Zed, the same person that did the WWF one.
Okay, okay. So tell us a little bit about the background of that.
Yeah. Well, the the family of this little girl who'd had cancer from about age 3 till 10 years old, on and off, and trying to get the right treatments and stuff, needed like a life saving treatment that was only available in America, and you needed to raise £100,000 or something. So it's like, again, how do you do that? If you're talking about like the NHS, how do you get NHS to Christmas #1? You'd think like, there's no chance, or the WWF. How are we going to get brands across the world to do this? You have to start with something small and do something. So the the um, the initial thing was, so we did a 1 minute brief campaign, and one of the ideas that the family really liked was at age 3, uh, our little girl shouldn't know the C word, and so the family said, could I was working in a film agency at the time, and we said we'll put some resource behind this. They wanted to do a film, and we said, yeah, let's just go and do it. So so we wrote this script, and we thought we're gonna have her saying cancer. So I had to go and direct. I wrote this thing, and it was very intentional in the way it was written to make you think that she was
I'm thinking
swearing.
something else. Yeah.
So she says stuff like, sometimes I say the word "k." I just want to get it all out. It's got the double meaning. It's talking about the cancer. It's when I say the word "k," my mum gets upset, and that type of thing. So, and then we beeped all of the C words out to make you think that. And,
She's swearing.
yeah,
Hmm.
and what we also, it was the same with the NHS campaign. We didn't have a brand, or we didn't have a focus point to go from. So we created a social media page for this cause, I suppose. no likes, no followers. So again, it's achieving. You have to be achieving a miracle to achieve what you want to do. Anyway, this film, at the end of it, Ben, the person, is like he's a big lad, all tatted up and probably like dead hard lad. We both look at each other at the end of this film and like, because she just said it after she'd taken a medicine, and we're both like trying not to cry and stuff, and we think, but what we didn't realise, we knew we've got a powerful moment there, but still you're posting a video to something that's gotten 0 likes and no one follows it and stuff. So you, you don't know how far you can take that. It could sometimes you just got to try, and it might get no likes or whatever. Um, but the next day, people were ringing me up from Unilad, the Hook newspapers and things like that, wanting the rights to the video to then give us half of the profit or something like that. And I actually said no because I thought that it could go more viral and raise more money if it just is allowed to go. They said they would share it anyway. So it was a bit of a risk to do that, but I felt it was right. And then it just went absolutely everywhere, and it got onto the news, and it was in newspapers, BBC News, Daily Mirror, things like that, and raised a huge amount of money. What is very sad is that she became so ill that she was never able to take this treatment, because it would have been, I think it was probably just an invasive treatment that the that the treatment would have actually caused even
Yeah.
more harm and
Okay.
stuff. So,
Okay.
so she unfortunately did pass away, which was a very sad moment for the family, and having directed her and her fighting, because her performance and everything was so amazing as
It
well.
was. Yeah.
Um, Very difficult to direct and very difficult to take, but we did our best, and that's all you can really do. And unfortunately, and so that sort of happened in the end. But what was nice as well to come out of it was that all of that money went directly to the charities that were involved in helping her and things like that. So that will have helped a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in vain or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I suppose it goes back to one of the things I noticed on the website and things. I think there was um, a statement, do work you're proud of.
Yeah,
Um, and running a small agency myself, sometimes you're I mean, you have to pay the bills, don't you? So you have to do jobs sometimes that you think really, there are certain necessities. So how how hard is it? Do you make all the decisions about the projects you work on that basis? If you don't think you can do something that you're proud of, whether it's just because it's bombastic insurance or the C word, whatever it is it what's your sort of qualification? How do you work out what jobs you want to take on?
well, I think it was something that I wrote it down the other day in my book. I always have this book that I do on Instagram and stuff. I've done it for years and years, and anything that's in my head, I'll sort of write it down. One of the things, I can't remember if I saw it. Sometimes I think I've thought of it, but I might have seen it somewhere, something. But it was make it unboring.
Yeah.
Um, and car insurance, you could go 2 years free insurance, whatever, and then it just becomes invisible because there are probably other people saying it. But if you go, Mr. Bombastic Insurance, fantastic, it just makes you laugh a little bit, or people relate to that song or whatever. So I think it's just about, someone said to me once, and it's stuck with me on every single project that I get involved in, or even if it's a small thing. Um, Someone said, "What's the best that could happen?"
Yeah.
And even if it's a small thing, or like or today we're running a brief that we want loads of people to get involved in. What if celebrities do it? Or for example, thinking big about the logo campaign, will Twitter do this because they're probably the biggest brand with an animal on it? Like, can we? If you think that big, you might get it. But if you sort of think, oh, we'll get a couple of little brands to do it, you'll you're never going to get that big scale of impressions, and it'll be a vanity project.
Okay.
I think sometimes people do like a vanity project, but what I like to do is try and make big results happen um, from anything, however small it is. Sometimes, if you're advertising tweezers or anything, especially if you're 1 minute brief, you can reach a lot of people. So yeah, what's the best that could happen is always,
I like that. Yeah.
but yeah, that's sort of.
Do you find that approach of, getting people to think a lot bigger than they maybe are initially thinking forces you to have better ideas?
I think
Just be
so, yeah,
just step outside of what you're comfortable with,
yeah,
and just
and
go.
use your instinct as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people ask me like, people will design a poster. Sometimes I do it. I'll spend a few minutes, but I try and have the idea initially, like the first thing I think of. And sometimes it's ridiculous, but it's in your head for a reason. There's always, when people say about creative block, I don't think it exists. I think as we grow older, we develop a fear of coming up with ideas.
Yep.
So when we're kids, my mum always likes to post this birthday card that I drew for her, and it said, "You're great like this um, horse," or something like that. And I put a sticker of a horse in, or unicorn or something. And I'm rubbish like this horseshoe. It's a sticker of a, I'm like, that's the weirdest thing ever. Um, but it made people laugh, and it's still a piece of content that gets shared to this day because it was just a funny thing.
Yeah.
Um, and that type of free thinking
Yeah. It's that
is,
childlike creativity thing
yeah,
almost. I mean, we're talking to Dan Kelsall on this series as well, actually. And Dan put a post up yesterday, and like anything that Dan posts, you don't know whether it's actually true or not. But there was a line in his post that said, and it just grabbed my attention. It was like we start losing our creativity from about the age of 8 onwards.
yeah,
When we start to get conscious about what other people think of us all of a sudden, instead
yeah,
of just being free and doing what we want. And it's just trying to go back to that freedom of,
absolutely.
what would a 6-year-old do here?
Well, yeah, definitely. The one of the reasons why OMB started was because we were given 7 weeks to do a final major project, and we spent 4 or 5. In fact, James, my creative partner, I'm pretty sure he'll be okay with me saying this, but he did the whole thing on like the final night. He had 7 weeks to do it, and he got a better grade than anyone actually. He got the highest grade, genuinely. And but we spent weeks procrastinating, not doing anything because like it was all about research and like sometimes when you're in the industry you don't have that luxury of the time.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's why we started off. Let's just do a brief in a minute, see what we just had as a laugh, and um, and it just made us laugh,
yeah,
and that's an important thing. Is actually if you're a, a creative and you're not allowed to be a creative in your job, what's the point in being a creative?
yeah.
Why did you do that course? If you're not enjoying your job every day, you might as well go and work um, anywhere really. Like, so it's about, and a lot of people use OMB as a creative outlet because even when they're in a sort of creative job, they don't necessarily get the
That's
chance
the
to
release.
work on big
Yeah,
brands
yeah,
or and it gives you a small chance to, if we work with like Coca-Cola, there's a small chance for everyone to have a go at a Coca-Cola ad, which no one gets to do that.
hmm,
So it gives people opportunities to get involved, and but again, having fun, going back to that sort of childlike thinking, and also your instinct. You should always trust that instinct, because as soon as you see something or you have an idea, or there's a reason for that, and if you think it's good and it's your first thing in your head, a lot of people discount it and think, oh, I better work for another 10 hours on this. But if it's good, just stick with it.
Yeah,
Just make that idea.
yeah,
But also what you have to do, like the WWF thing, people were saying to Zed, oh, imagine if this was real, imagine, or this would be great. It's like, no, it will be great. You need to, basically that day I said, can you do it? And they said, we're actually having a meeting for our big next year's campaign in an hour. Can you put a deck together? So I'm just whacking loads of pictures and things and telling them what they could achieve with this thing in an hour. And they showed it. And then after the meeting, they said, we want this to be our big campaign
yeah.
for the next year. So
There's an element of that, isn't there? I remember someone said to me once, it's a pretty common thing here. A camel is a racehorse designed by a committee. So you started with something great, and then you asked too many people, took too long about
yeah,
it, and all of a sudden, the thing's not a racehorse
yeah,
anymore.
or yeah, exactly. And you think about it too much, or you doubt yourself and you think, oh, well, we're never going to achieve that.
Yeah,
But I have a strong belief in the community, as well as just the learnings and experiences from stuff like the NHS and other things, and you apply that to your next. So every time you learn, like, oh, celebrities did that and they wanted to do it, or the fear of missing out, we can apply to this and make something bigger happen there. Um, and I don't see. I try and not be negative always. I think people have that inbuilt negativity that grows and grows over a few years.
yeah.
Again, it is being worried about what people think. So sometimes, especially when you come up with a 1 minute idea, oh, I can't write that down. I've got this ridiculous thing in my head, and I'm going to look like an idiot by writing this down. But I say, doesn't matter. You've got a minute. You've got an excuse,
Yeah,
which is another good thing. You've got an excuse for it to be not great. But I
because I
see it,
only had 60 seconds. What do
yeah.
you expect?
Whereas if you come up with that idea in a few hours
Yeah,
and it's ridiculous, people might look at you a bit funny or something. But if if you and I did a few 1 minute briefs now and we spent 10 minutes on it, the wall behind us is going to be full with ideas on something, and in just 10, 20 minutes, we probably would have a campaign.
yeah. I mean, just to wrap. I mean, bringing it up, bringing it all to a close. We're at a stage now where marketing people, particularly, and anybody in the creative industry, has never had as much access to all the data and analytics they want. And it's, for me, it seems to have bred uh, a, a population of people in the industry who think everything can be data driven. And it's all about audience targeting and the, retargeting campaigns and ad sequencing and all this really clever stuff that can no doubt help accelerate the success of the campaign. But for me, it sort of forgets that, and it goes back to everything you seem to be doing. The best and most effective things live and die by the quality of the creative that's used in them. The data and the technology and all that's available can help you accelerate that. But do you think we've lost some of the focus on the importance of those creative elements?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes that you're trying to do so many things or put your piece of work in so many areas. You're thinking, we're gonna do a digital ad and then a social media and then put this amount of spend behind it here and there, but you've not even done your idea yet. What if you shouldn't do a digital ad at all, and the idea comes out of it that you should be on a billboard that people will then take pictures of because it's that good, which becomes your social media campaign because it's people like it. Or like, I don't know if you saw the Magnum advert in Piccadilly Gardens in Manchester.
No.
It's they said that it's the only thing that can make lying on Piccadilly Gardens better. And Piccadilly Gardens isn't known as the greatest place in the world, really. So it became a viral thing, and it was just a billboard. I don't know whether they intended it, but then the public are your social media, and then they take it further.
Yeah, yeah.
So so sometimes I think we apply like data and platforms and wanting to sort of tick all these boxes, and you do that with a weak idea. No one cares about your ad. You might have it seen by a lot of people, but if they don't really see it, or even if I always go back to billboards because that's what I've always liked. But if that billboard doesn't make you go, oh, that's funny, or oh, that's sad,
Hmm.
um, you just walk past it. But if it just makes you flick your eyes up, you're still you're not going to stand and stare at it. But it's you shouldn't think. I think you should think of the idea first, and then think, what can we do with
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
Uh, the data and everything like that is helpful, and there's a place for it. But I always think that the idea should come first, and then, I mean, some of my I don't have a set way of doing campaigns, whereas other people probably do. Like, we'll start with this, and a lot of it is escalation, and so you start with the small things, and then midway through, so you don't have the plan beforehand. And some people would probably say this is a load of rubbish, but it's been effective. So you do the first few things, and then when you send those emails, will you do this? Will you change your logo? People come back and say, who else has done it? Like, no one. And when you've got that first person, you change your email and you change your approach to, we've got these two football teams are doing this. Will you do it as well? And that's a totally
Not
different.
Nottingham Forest is the first one that springs to mind.
It's what
Nottingham Forest will be the first one that
Forest,
springs
yeah.
to
Well, they
mind.
did
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
Did they do? They
yeah,
took the
they
tree
got
up. Very good.
involved, and
Good.
but it's just changing your approach little by little and then once a load of people have done it, you then go to the Premier League or to Sky Sports and say, these teams are doing it. Would you cover this?
Yeah,
But you couldn't go to Sky Sports at the start when no one. It's just an idea in someone's head.
yeah.
Um, you have to be armed with what's actually happening. Probably off a bit of a tangent here, but
No, no.
but it's
Good.
escalating. Like, if we'd have tried to do that for a campaign for WWF through data, um, platforms, and had a rigid plan in
Yeah.
place, it would never have got the reach it did. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Finishing up then. I mean, you've mentioned about a lot of the campaigns you do. You haven't really had a plan when the start of 1 minute briefs or whatever it was, or it was just an idea.
Yeah.
Um, what's the plan for you and for the Bank of Creativity and 1 minute briefs? I mean, where have you any other things going on? Where do you see it all going and developing over the next month?
I think it's just about continuing doing what we do and working with Matthew has been running the has been running the social media feed a lot lately, so it's freed me up a little bit to get involved a little bit more in other projects, or even uh, doing films, and doing doing a film for the ambulance service soon, and obviously that's a great project to get involved in, and I'm potentially going to be doing a powerful film. So um, coming away from 1 minute briefs a little bit allows me to sort of relook at it. Uh, it could be that you could go in all sorts of different directions with Bank of Creativity, but I quite enjoy having the freedom of being able to to dive into projects here and there, rather than having to have loads of staff and think, what's my next thing? And
Yeah,
obviously, sometimes I don't know what the situation with you need to pay people, you need to pay yourself, and when you've got responsibilities and people to pay for, that makes it very difficult, and you've got to take on more work, and the more stress comes with that as well. And obviously, for health reasons and things from the past and things, I don't particularly want to be able to do want to
Yeah.
have to be forced into do that. But yeah, just doing good stuff for people. We do a lot of charity work. The one we're doing today, is about men's health against suicides and prostate cancer and all sorts, and raising awareness of that. And we will do it. We will
Would
get.
I be right in saying that your own personal experience with the health issues has sort of given you a different context from which you move forward and decide the sort of things that you want to do and the level of stress, anxiety, pressure that you're willing to put yourself under because of the potential consequences that you were
I think so. Yeah, I think one thing I spoke when I first met you was very much about resilience, and you have to be very, very thick-skinned in the industry because even thinking about the C Word film when it got posted, there was 80,000 comments on there. Probably 99% of them are positive comments. But for some reason, it's
focus on.
inbuilt. I'm looking at the negative ones that say, "Oh, I can't believe a little girl swears." They obviously hadn't watched it till the end when they realised it wasn't that. Um, or as you get successful, or apparently, I always say there's apparently successful because it can be very stressful and it takes over your whole life, and this becomes a lifestyle whilst you're trying to do it for your community, um, and it's not always good for your own mental health
Yeah,
and things. But you have to keep going, and you become a bit trapped in by your own community almost, and the people on the outside and all that. Any negativity that comes in, and it can be quite hard to just keep going and persevering through that. Um, but yeah, my own personal, so health wise, I've got to always take a step back. Um, in terms, I also had a quite a bad slip disc whilst 1 Minute Briefs went really on an upwards curve during the lockdowns, and I was in loads of pain, and life wasn't even worth living at that point. So that's another thing. I'm just a sick note, really. But that happened. But I also apply that sort of strength of character into what I do and belief. So I think when I came back from the heart attack, I actually changed my mindset from being a creative. I said, right, I'm a creative director now. And I was 26. I probably had no right to say that I was a creative director, but I knew I could do good work.
yeah,
So I said, will you call me a creative director at your place? That's what I want to be. Um, and they said, yeah. So suddenly so sometimes it's your own mindset about yourself.
yeah, yeah. Back to what you said earlier about that thinking bigger than you think is possible at that
Yeah,
stage, and just
exactly. Yeah.
and then it happens.
Well, yeah. If you say that's what I am, or um, it goes back to. I mean, I did a business with my little brother when I was 16, and we we started posting emails to local business in Stockport and said we do logos, website, because I was doing graphic design at college and stuff. I think I was 16, 17, and this person got back to us and said, we're a big engineering firm, shredding company. We need a whole new website and whatever. And I was offering discount. I was saying, we're a new company and all that. And my office was my our family home, little terraced house. And this man turns up in his flashy pickup truck. And I had a belief that this was a normal, well, not normal, but I had a belief that we could do this person's website. But he must have turned up at this house and thought, this is odd. Um, and then I said, yeah, come for it. Made my mum wait in the kitchen. And whilst he came into my office for a meeting, which was the dining room, and it must have been a ridiculous thing for him to see. Um, but and then I said, "Hey, this is the web developer," and it was my 12-year-old little brother. So so, but it was that belief that we could do the work. And if I'd have said, I'm a 16-year-old. I've just started college, and my brother does websites. He's 12. There's no chance
No chance.
there's no chance they would have turned up at the house. So when they look at the address, they might have thought it was an office or something. But when they turned up at the house, they were there. I've got them there. So I think it goes back to that sort of belief of, and also saying and learning and knowing and believing in yourself and whatever, that don't restrict yourself and don't lack self-belief yourself and stuff. Just
Yeah.
go out there and say, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
And I try and instill that very much in people in the community, because a lot of the people do have confidence issues, and a lot of people have mental health issues as well, including myself. So it's a nice place for people, and that's what we want to just keep going,
Okay.
and helping people believe in themselves and create great stuff.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's a good note on which to round up. I mean, I think um, believe in yourself, think big, and trust your instincts are three things that come out of that for me. So thanks very much, Nick. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.